Hi, quick disclaimer before we get started. I got called on a last minute TDY and I'm currently traveling for work. So if you're wondering if this is a hotel shower curtain behind me, it is. Homework's still due, so we're making do with what we have, and I appreciate your understanding. Now on to my speech. From 2015 to 2020, the Divers Alert Network received reports of an average of 175 diver deaths per year. The reports show that the majority of the deceased were experienced divers, yet many of them failed to follow established diving safety protocols, and unfortunately, this cost them their life. The statistics show why these rules were in place and why they're so important. They're there to ensure that you don't dive like a dummy. Hi, my name is Gabby. I'm an experienced diver with 6 certifications, 40 dives, and over 25 hours spent underwater hooked up to an air tank. I've dove all over the world in various environmental conditions, and I have unfortunately witnessed the death of a diver due to a blatant lack of respect for diving safety protocols. It is why I take diving safety so seriously. It truly is a matter of life and death. So with that being said, I would like to discuss what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be going over the key elements that ensure a safe and successful dive. Those elements are training, equipment, environment, and planning. Let's dive in and talk about training. Before you take your first underwater plunge as a scuba diver, you want to ensure that you are prepared both in mind and body. It should go without saying that basic swimming ability and comfort in the water is a must. You also need to be certified to dive through an accredited program, such as the Professional Association of Diving Instructors, or PADI, or the Scuba Schools International, also known as SSI. These certifications show that you have the necessary skills and knowledge to dive. Speaking of knowledge, did you know that SCUBA itself is an acronym? It stands for Self-Contained Underwater Breathing Apparatus. We'll discuss more about what SCUBA is as we talk about equipment. So, just like in a video game, every diver has their preference on the content and layout of their equipment, but there are universal pieces that all divers will need. Let's start with your buoyancy control device, also known as a BCD. Here, I have a BCD. It hooks up to your air supply through this little notch, and it provides buoyancy control underwater, as well as acts as an emergency flotation device. You're going to need your fins and your mask and snorkel. Some people debate on if snorkel is needed or not. It saved my life, so use a snorkel. You'll also need your regulators here. You have a primary and secondary. It hooks up to your air supply through this notch right here. And you also have your pressure gauge, which shows your depth and your remaining PSI, the remaining pressure in your tank. There are other elements that divers may use, specialized equipment, such as buoyancy, emergency buoys, knives, or cameras, things like that. And I have an example of what the completed setup looks like, front and back. You'll have protective equipment as well, such as a wetsuit, depending on water temperature. And yeah, this is how it all comes together. So this is a basic overview of your equipment. Regardless of your setup, you want to check the serviceability of your equipment before you get into the water. It is very embarrassing to forget an item, and you want to ensure everything's working and your air is turned on before your descent. It happens a lot more than you think. Depending on where you are in the world, you also want to be cognitive of the differences in measuring systems, and you want to make sure that you have any conversions needed and you know what the local measuring system is. Now let's consider your environment. A good rule to follow is to dive with a buddy, someone who is familiar with the local area and can inform you on the local hazards and wildlife. You should get a briefing on all this before you dive. You'll also need to know the general conditions of the water, such as high visibility versus low visibility, salt water versus fresh water, or cold versus warm temperatures. so you can bring the appropriate gear. And lastly, we'll talk about planning. As Benjamin Franklin once said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Planning is an important aspect in all things in life, but especially when you're planning a dive. You and your team should be on the same page as far as turnaround point, time, and depth restrictions. You need to consider a lot of things in your dive, such as, will you be entering from the shore by boat? Does your dive have a specific purpose, such as research, underwater photography? Will the boat be anchored, or will it be moving with you as you drift dive? Does the team understand the universal hand signals? Do they ensure that they mean the same thing to everyone? There is a lot to consider. The last place you want to be unsure about your plan is while you're underwater and unable to communicate effectively. As you can see, there are many different aspects that go into a successful dive. Now that we've gone over the basics, I hope you understand the importance of taking your training seriously, as well as the need for your equipment, your environment, and your planning. What we discussed today won't ensure a danger-free dive, but they will ensure that yours is the safest it can be. Remember, don't be a dummy. Practice safe diving.